Hello, this is Wmpyr. Okay, it is my privilege and honor to be able to review this manga for you guys. It's called Tiger Mask, and this is not the original publishing. This is it's been republished several times. The original manga came out like in 1968 and ran to like 1970, and you can see some of the artwork here. So it's definitely old school Japanese manga, cult classic. Um, so let me go into the general plot, right? We have this orphan. And this orphan is taken into the tiger's hole. Literally, it's called the tiger's hole. It's really the tiger's den. It's coming from the snake pit, which was an actual group of wrestlers in England, Wingham, if I'm not mistaken. If that pronunciation is correct, I don't know. But the Snake Pit is a legendary training house where they created wrestlers that came from that dojo, that school essentially, where they had real skills to like mess you up. So they call it hooking skills, being able to shoot, which meant wrestling for real. Like it became what in Japan is called a cement, a concrete match where you're no longer doing it to make as much money as possible. Now it's about rather than capturing the fans, and entertaining and getting money, it's turned into a fight, like an actual fight. So the wrestlers that came from the snake pit had those skills, and they were notorious for it, being able to really destroy a human being with these lethal grappling moves. So the snake pit is what it was called, and then when they translated it into Japan, they called it the hole of the snake, or the snake hole. And that's why this is called the tiger's hole. But it's really, it could be called the tiger's pit, right? Or the tiger's den. And then, of course, we have someone like Ken Shamrock, who's famous in the UFC and stuff. This guy, his group was called the Lion's Den. Sorry, the Tigers. They were called the Lion's Den, right? So that kind of the same idea from that. But let's see. So this organization called, I'll just call it the Tiger's Hole for now, because that's the literal direct translation. But it really, the Tiger's Pit. So the Tiger's Hole is this evil organization that they would take like kids and stuff off the street, like homeless kids, foster child, and they would train them to become the worst possible professional wrestler imaginable. Just brutal techniques, all illegal moves, and train them to be a monster essentially, right? And they went through brutal training. And then when they get into the ring, they're able to, I guess, manipulate the professional wrestling world because they were an organization that you didn't want to mess with. So if someone came from the Tiger's Hole, you knew that this is not someone to mess around with. So that person necessarily never became like world champion or anything like that, but they were able to manipulate stuff, promoters and whatnot. Okay, so it's a very powerful organization. If you cross them, they'll kill you. The wrestlers had to pay the organization, the Tiger's Hole, like 50% of their salary. So they were taken in as kids and brutally trained in this hardcore, old school, like training where students died. And it's this evil organization. But anyway, So the main character, Tiger Mask, is he was one of the students there. Let's say one of the bright ones, one of the exceptional ones that graduated from that made it out of the training, and now he's in the professional wrestling world. And yeah, so this kind of plot, right, where you have this evil organization that created this monster, but the monster ends up becoming the hero. This kind of story it was really, really popular, this formula. And it was used over and over and over again in Japan, especially during this time. A real famous one would be, it's probably even older than this, is Kamen Rider, the masked rider, the guy on the motorcycle with the bug-looking eyes. That was kind of a similar story where there was an evil organization and they actually kidnapped people and made them into cyborgs to build an army. But one of them revolts and becomes the hero, right? Devilman is kind of similar. It's not an organization, but it's the devil, the demon army, essentially, right? So it's always this like evil organization, and that creates, you know, our hero that has this abilities, all these special abilities, and now fights back against it. So Tiger Mask follows that formula. And yeah, so essentially the theme is obviously professional wrestling. And what's amazing about this, so in Japan, right, professional wrestling became uber popular right when TV started to come over. The TV was invented and brought to Japan. So it was invented where? In the US? I don't know where it was invented, but the television was invented, brought to Japan, and it was being introduced. And when it was being introduced, you'd have like one TV for the whole neighborhood, you know, so everyone would come into that person's house and watch, from my understanding. And everyone would sit and watch, like the screens like this big, like small, but the machine itself was huge, right? So the TVs back in the day. And anyway, so during that time, what did they broadcast? They had just lost the war. Japan was devastated. So we had World War II. They lost badly, devastated. And this Japanese the father of Japanese professional wrestling, his name was Riki Dozan. He was a marketing genius. This guy started to hold professional wrestling events and televised it. He somehow was able to convince, you know, the network, the television network or whatever, and this is, you know, in the infancy of all this. And then they televised this where this Japanese professional wrestler became the national hero because he would bring in foreigners and especially Americans coming in, and this guy would win. So, you know, losing the war, devastating, our morals crushed and everything. But here is a guy in the world of professional wrestling, a Japanese person, now beating the American, which was, you know, that is not what happened in World War II. So it kind of was like almost like a redemption kind of thing. So people could not get enough of this. So he became the national hero, like super popular. And two of his students, one was Giant Baba, who was going to become a professional baseball player. He was going to be the pitcher. And he was this incredible prospect because he was so freaking tall. He was like our Andre the Giant kind of thing. You know, he was our Big Show, our Andre. But because he hurt his the tendon or the ligament in his arm, he had to quit pro baseball, and he came to professional wrestling. So he is like this elite athlete now, studying to become under the top man, the top dog. He's going to become his student, right? The other guy was none other than Antonio Inoki. And between the two, those two were later on, they become the successors to Riki Dozan, the father of Japanese pro wrestling. So they succeed, and they create, each one creates their own wrestling organization in Japan. Baba creates All Japan, and then Inoki creates New Japan. And Baba being the elite, he was supposed to be this mega prospect superstar that was going to play for the Giants in Japan. Is it Tokyo Giants? I'm not sure, but he was going to be this baseball star. And so this guy, who is now a professional wrestler, he has all the connections. He was the successor. Okay, he was given everything. And when I say given, it sounds like he didn't earn it, but because he did go through brutal training, and I'm sure his travels in America, where he was basically making connections and everything. And so he had all the connections, the NWA, all National Wrestling Alliance, and that was the connection he wanted. He had all of that. So he was able to bring in talent from, overseas, because in Japan it was kind of taboo to do a Japanese wrestler versus Japanese wrestler, especially because of the Rikidozan situation, and probably also because Rikidozan did a match with Kimura, who is the guy that fought Helio Gracie, from the Gracie family, the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu people. So that ended like very nasty and ugly. So because of that, I think there was a taboo. You're not supposed to do Japan versus Japan kind of thing. Those are our heroes. Don't make the heroes fight kind of thing, right? So anyway, if you can't bring in foreigners, what are you going to do? So Inoki, on the other hand, was kind of screwed at this point, right? So he what can he do? He could only get creative, because he cannot compete with Giant Baba. He didn't have the connections like that. So he tried his best. I think he really tried, especially with the WWF. So Vince Sr. at the time, I believe. So he really tried connecting with that and doing stuff over there, but he was having a very, very difficult time in Japan. So he had to go out of the box, and boy, was this guy really good at that. So he was the guy that did the match against Muhammad Ali, started bringing in martial arts people into the professional wrestling world. So he started doing crazy stuff like that. He had to. In a way, he had to, because there's no way he could compete with Giant Baba, right? Giant Baba did pretty much proper professional wrestling. So Inoki had to do outside the box stuff. One of the things that he did that was outside the box was the tiger mask. How did this work? Well, this manga was super successful, probably because of the Rikidozan, the father of Japanese pro wrestling. Because of that popularity, it was really from that this was created. And then because of that, because that popularity had been created and everything, they were like, there's a market here. Let's do a manga about professional wrestling. Okay, so the publishers allowed it, and they did it. And it was so successful that they made an anime of this. So from what I could tell, the anime kind of deviated from this, but it still was aired, and it was a huge success. Kids loved it. Well, those kids, let's say it's been like 10 years. So this was like the 70s, let's say, and then those kids grew up, and now they have children, right? So those kids that are now that watch this anime, they're parents now, and they're watching actual professional wrestling. So they're watching New Japan Professional Wrestling, and there comes Tiger Mask. The character that they watched as a kid. Imagine the nostalgia there. So they're excited to watch, what they saw as a kid in the ring now. So there's lots of nostalgia, and they're excited to see, what is this going to be like? And so Inoki did that. To compete with Baba. So he brought in this anime character, manga character, into the world of real life professional wrestling. And then now the people that watched this as a kid are bringing their children and going, watch this, watch this. You're watching the real thing. I had to watch it as an anime, and they're so now you're getting double the audience. You're getting the children, and you're getting the I guess the dads that watched it. So you're getting double the profit there. It instantly, and then Inoki pulling these martial arts matches. New Japan became an instant success to where now it started to surpass Giant Baba's organization, All Japan Professional Wrestling. So it started to get hotter. And that was their golden age. So anyway, I hope that gives you guys an idea about, why this is such a big deal over there. And of course, the person that they chose to play him in the actual professional wrestling world was none other than their genius, their amazing talent called Sayama Satoru. And this guy was just, they said he was probably could have been an Olympic athlete. He was just an incredible talent, right? And some people, I've seen some, even here in the U.S., some very, very hardcore professional wrestling fans, because not everyone is familiar with obviously Japanese professional wrestling, which is called puroresu over there. Some people over here are familiar with that, and they're really some even like it more than the stuff over here. And I've heard from some of those fans that they believe Tiger Mask, that Sayama Satoru guy, is probably the greatest ever. Now he has been, you can't say that technically he has been surpassed by some of today's professional wrestlers, but what he brought to the table at the time, the unprecedented, and he was the original, and by surpassed I mean, like, for example, he would do like a moonsault off the top turnbuckle. So let's say he did a 360 degrees splash onto the opponent. Well, there are guys today that are doing 720. There are guys today that are doing, like a half twist before that, or, who knows what. So in that sense, there are guys that they surpassed. Mystico has a move where he does a head scissors, spins, what do they call it, around the world or whatever, and then lands in a what they call a Fujiwara armbar. I mean, it's insane, some of the stuff today. But Tiger Mask he was like that stuff before that stuff existed. He kind of wrote the book on it, So in that sense, it's absolutely jaw-dropping. Even some of the moves today hold up to like as amazing. But the other thing was he was capable of doing lucha style, Japanese strong style. That's Inoki style, and some the British, because he also went to the British market and he was very successful there as Sammy Lee, who did they call him like the son of Bruce Lee or something like that. And so he had like at least 3 or 4 different styles of professional wrestling that he brought to the table. And that guy, honestly, he said that the reason why he suddenly quit, it's so interesting because right at the peak of his popularity, he just quit. This guy also, right at his peak in the story, in this, this fiction story, this character at his peak suddenly just disappears. He dies, but he disappears. Sayama Satoru said the reason why he even got to professional wrestling was because he admired Antonio Inoki and he wanted to do the martial arts aspect. And that was promised to him, but then all of a sudden he's here doing Tiger Mask, which is, he felt like the opposite of real martial arts because he's playing this character now. And it's more about the acting and the putting on the show. And so he just felt, in a way, betrayed, so he quit. And then we know that later on, he becomes the guy kind of responsible for bringing Hickson Gracie to Japan. And he created the Shuto organization, which was a lot of their guys became MMA fighters and also helped bring in the transition from, more like professional wrestling style to more MMA. Just bringing the transition into MMA in Japan. He was definitely hugely responsible over there. He was their genius. He was their culprit in that sense. I wouldn't say it was just him, but he definitely played a big part. But okay, so the Tiger Mask, whether it was the actual professional wrestler or whether it was the fictional character, either way, very, very influential, powerful characters, very interesting. So let me go back to the manga itself, the manga of Tiger Mask here. So you know that he is this foster child taken up by this evil organization, trained in all the rule-breaking techniques of professional wrestling. So he plays a heel character in the world of professional wrestling. And he's able to snake his way into the Japanese pro wrestling circuit because everyone wants to see him lose. Because the fans are demanding it. They're like, he's such a bad guy. We want to see him lose. Put him in. Because originally, Baba and Inoki are in this, and they don't want to put him into their organization and have him wrestle in Japan, but they don't have a choice. And Tiger Mask is like, yes, exactly. I had planned this all along type of thing. And it seems like he becomes their number one prospect for the Tiger's Hole. He's their number one star to make it big in the professional wrestling world. For a guy to just be doing all these evil moves and still become that popular. But he goes to his old foster care, the center where he was raised, where all these foster children are. So he goes back there and he finds out that one of his classmates, she now runs the place with this other guy, and they got, obviously a new batch of foster children. So he starts donating money to them. And remember I said he had to pay 50% of his income to the Tiger's Hole? Well, he is unable to do that because he's trying to save the home. The home was about to get bought off by some corporate or whatever, and they were gonna smash it down. So he gives them the money, but that money was supposed to go to the Tiger's Hole, and now the Tiger's Hole is like, you know the rules. If you don't pay us in time, we're gonna put a hit on your head, and it's gonna look like an accident in the ring, but we're gonna just send one after the next. We're going to send our men after you, and sooner or later, they're going to kill you in the ring. If they don't kill you, you're going to commit suicide because it's just, you're not going to be able to take it. And you're not going to know who's, one of our guys or not, and we're just going to keep sending them until you die, kind of thing. So we're going to make an example out of you. You don't want to do this. But he had to, because he chose morality, chose ethics, and so now they're after him. And that's pretty much what happens throughout. They send all these assassins after him, and it's very, very creative on how they do it. They created a fake tournament for him to enter, and it's a tournament, so they're battling each other too, climbing up, pretending to climb up the tournament, but it's rigged for them. They already know. But against him, they go full force, that kind of thing. So all these kinds of different things are devised to come after him. Very, very interesting stuff. And I know in the U.S., Muscle, millions of unusual creatures lurking everywhere. I believe that's what it stood for. Muscle, the toys from the 80s. That, in Japan, is called Kinnikuman. And that was mega popular in the 80s in Japan. That storyline, to me, the DNA of that storyline of Muscle, Kinnikuman, comes from this. And if you've read Muscle, the original, and you read this, you kind of see this is this just retold and added different layers and stuff. But it's really this. And that's something that I've noticed even back then as a kid reading both mangas. which I read both of them over and over and over again. And I was a big professional wrestling fan and whatnot. So this is the OG, the original gangster. This is such an amazing. Anyway, so Tiger Mask, the whole time he's fighting against the Tiger's Hole, and to separate himself from them, and he starts to become friends with Antonio Inoki and Giant Baba, who are real life professional wrestlers. That both of them have passed away, unfortunately, but they are characters in this. He becomes friends with them, and he starts wrestling with proper technique, like good legal techniques. So he starts doing that. And it's kind of, like I said, to separate himself from the Tiger's Hole and to not be that way where they're just completely vicious rule breakers. So he starts wrestling with skill and technique and following the rules. Okay, but then at some point, there's times where he goes back. He reverts back to that. They call him the Yellow Devil, right? He reverts back to that Yellow Devil form, and he is a genius at rule-breaking moves, using these dirty, dirty tactics, and biting and eye gouging and kicking to the groin and all that kinds of stuff. He's a bona fide. He's trained in that at the Tiger's Hole many, many years, and he's a master at that. So it's hard for him to give it up, but he's constantly battling. I need to be good. Oh, but the bad comes out. I need to be good. So you have that kind of dynamic throughout, and sometimes the enemies, the worst enemies, bring out the worst in him. But then finally he comes to a realization where he goes, you know what? I don't need to do that. I don't need to battle and try to become completely good. That's not me. Me, the way that I am, is I have both skills. So I need to use both. I need to be able to do everything. I need to become an all-round fighter. And so he starts doing that. And and that is what was interesting with the actual Tiger Mask that came way later. But in the professional wrestling ring in Japan, Sayama Satoru was in a way kind of going to be an all-rounder too. Like I said, he had like 4 different wrestling styles that he would utilize, making him extremely well balanced in that sense. So this Tiger Mask was going for that kind of thing. The original anime and manga Tiger Mask was going for that, where he was trying to be, hey, if it's within 5 seconds in the rule of professional wrestling, you can use dirty moves, So he was trying to combine them both together. And when he started combining both, he had like the ultimate style. And when he once had the ultimate style, he reached his peak. And now it was his chance to get the world champion belt, the NWA world champion belt. And that was going to be his peak. And he had his chance against the opponent is also a real life person who is actually Dory Funk Jr., the older brother of Terry Funk. Terry Funk recently passed away, unfortunately. But so Tiger Mask battling Dory Funk Jr. looked like he was going to do it, but then was unable to. And then the second match, which was not in Tokyo, but this time it was going to be in Osaka, in the city of Osaka, he was supposed to battle again, and they were anticipating he's going to win this time. Well, before getting into the arena, he took off his mask, and he was in an incident where he was trying to save a kid, and he got hit by a truck, and he dies, and nobody knows that he dies, and that Tiger Mask is dead. They just go, Tiger Mask didn't show up. What the hell? That's all they know. And the person, he dies as, his alter ego. Tiger Mask is the alter ego, so he dies as the normal, he pretended he was some rich boy, foster kid. So anyway, so that he dies as that guy, and nobody knows that guy was Tiger Mask. There's no evidence, there's nothing of that. So being his background as a foster kid, he was alone his whole life. and then alone all the way to the end. Like not even, oh, he was Tiger Man. He doesn't even get that. He dies alone, kind of thing. So, very poetic, sad ending. Uh, Amazing, amazing manga. I'm very lucky to have read it many, many times throughout my life, and yeah, this is just one that I have enjoyed. So I wanted to share that with you guys. So that's it for now. Thank you for viewing, and take care, folks.